A shocking murder case involving 6 victims stunned the entire nation of Japan. The crime scene was unlike anything investigators had ever seen. Not chaotic or messy, but carefully arranged, almost like a disturbing art gallery hidden in the wilderness. The bodies of 6 teenage boys were discovered in glass displays deep in the forest. Each one had been positioned with unsettling precision, as if every detail had meaning. One victim had his lower body removed, with a large blue butterfly placed on his back. In his hand, he still held another butterfly, as though frozen mid-observation. Another boy was found with both hands severed, his arms embedded into hardened cement, as if permanently preserved. A third body remained physically intact, but the head had been violently twisted backward in an unnatural angle. Strange markings covered his skin, making the scene even more disturbing. A fourth victim also had his lower body removed. His expression was strangely calm, almost unreadable, while crude drawings covered his body like primitive artwork. The fifth boy was suspended in the air, tilted to one side with his arms stretched outward, resembling someone reaching toward invisible butterflies. The sixth and final victim was different. Only one foot was missing, and unlike the others, his body had no decorative markings or artistic arrangement. It stood out as incomplete, almost plain compared to the rest. When investigators compared the bodies, a strange pattern emerged. Each scene seemed to connect human form with butterflies, except the final victim, whose case broke the pattern entirely. Soon, police confirmed all 6 victims were male high school students. The case immediately exploded across the country, dominating media attention and public fear. As the investigation intensified, a man suddenly walked into the police station and confessed to the murders. Calmly, he claimed responsibility for all 6 deaths. At first, officers believed it was a sick joke, especially because one of the victims was his own son. But when the man began describing the crime scenes in precise detail, the mood in the room changed completely. When asked why he could commit such brutal acts, even against his own child, he showed no fear or remorse. Instead, his eyes reflected an unsettling obsession. He insisted that everything he did was necessary to create perfect art. The man then began telling his story. His name was Kai. He was born into a family deeply rooted in the arts. His father, Hiro, was a well-known painter. From childhood, Kai showed a strong interest in artistic expression. When he was 6 years old, he became fascinated with butterflies. To him, they represented the most beautiful form of life. But every butterfly he caught eventually died, so he carefully preserved and buried them, filling his surroundings with their remains. Hiro noticed this unusual behavior and began guiding him. Instead of discouraging it, he taught Kai how to preserve butterfly specimens, explaining how to maintain their beauty permanently. Behind this, Hiro himself carried a hidden obsession with preserving human beauty, though he never acted on it directly due to moral and social boundaries. Instead, he expressed it through painting, passing those suppressed ideas onto his son. Kai learned preservation techniques, how to gently handle specimens, use chemicals to maintain their form, and remove parts most likely to decay. These teachings deepened his fascination and distorted his understanding of beauty and life. He also began imagining the world through butterfly eyes, believing they could see a richer spectrum of colors. He expressed these visions through his artwork, which his father praised, further reinforcing his obsession. But art and childhood fascination alone were not enough to push him toward darkness. Everything changed when he met a girl who would shape his entire life. Her name was Mika. Mika was the daughter of one of Hiro's clients. During a portrait session for her ill mother, Mika became emotional, insisting that her mother looked more beautiful in reality than in any painting. Kai misread her reaction as a deep sensitivity to art and comforted her. He later brought her to his private art space, where she was exposed to his unusual paintings. There, Kai discovered something extraordinary. Mika could perceive colors in a way that felt beyond normal human ability, just like him. Fascinated, Mika called him and his vision the butterfly world. From that moment, the two formed a close bond built on shared perception and artistic obsession. But tragedy soon followed. Mika's mother passed away, and not long after, Kai's father also died unexpectedly. The two drifted apart. Years later, when Kai was in his 30s, Mika reached out from America. She had become a successful artist, known for her extraordinary perception of color. Despite their different paths, they rekindled their connection and remained close. Eventually, both got married and had families of their own. However, misfortune struck again. Both of their spouses died prematurely. This left Kai and Mika as each other's only emotional support for years. Then, a month before the murders, Mika contacted Kai with a proposal. She wanted to host an exclusive art camp in a secluded forest villa. Ironically, Kai's old family home. She also invited Kai's son, Rio, along with other talented high school boys. Trusting her, Kai agreed. At the camp, Mika assigned the boys a task. Within 10 days, they must paint a portrait of her daughter. The best artist would become her successor. The boys accepted eagerly, driven by ambition. During this time, Kai and Mika reflected on their past. Kai confessed that he could never see the world as vividly as she did. Mika replied that her vision was unique, even butterflies could not match it. At that moment, something shifted in Kai's perception. The world around him transformed, and in his eyes, the boys appeared as if they were sprouting butterfly wings. Back in the interrogation room, the police reacted with anger and disgust, calling Kai a monster for killing even his own son. But Kai remained calm. He compared his actions to fine dining, explaining that just as people distinguish ordinary beef from premium wagyu through experience, true understanding of art requires direct experience of value. He insisted that sacrifices were necessary to reach the highest form of art, what he called the kingdom of butterflies. As he spoke, his expression turned strangely peaceful, almost joyful, as if he truly believed in the beauty of what he had done. The police, however, saw only madness. Kai continued his confession, revealing that he originally never intended to harm the boys. They were carefully selected participants in Mika's project, meant to compete for artistic succession. But everything changed when Mika suddenly fell ill. She was diagnosed with a terminal disease, the same illness that had killed her mother, and was told she had less than a month to live. The art camp was cancelled. Kai tried to bring the boys back home, but when he returned to the empty villa, something inside him collapsed. The unfinished vision left him consumed by emptiness. Eventually, he gave in to his darkest impulses. He began watching the boys closely, studying their traits. In his mind, the most exceptional one would become Mika's successor, while the others would become his art. One boy stood out for his obsession with the color blue and his fascination with morpho butterflies. He even requested specimens from Kai's collection. Mika had also noticed his unique artistic style, describing it as dreamlike and mysterious. Kai decided this boy would be shaped around a morpho butterfly concept. Another boy, with rebellious blonde hair and a passion for graffiti, was seen by others as troublesome. But Kai interpreted him differently, like a warning-colored butterfly that appears dangerous but is not truly harmful, someone expressing emotion rather than violence. And so, what began as an art camp slowly turned into something far darker in Kai's mind, until it ended in the shocking case that brought him before the police. Yumi acknowledged one of the boys for his talent and even gave him a chance to freely express his art. Inspired by this, Kai decided to shape him into a vibrant artwork based on the heliconius butterfly, full of energy and striking color. Another student was deeply passionate about dance. He had once released a video showcasing his intense performance against a red backdrop, representing youthful fire and ambition. Yumi invited him to the camp because of this raw energy. Kai saw him as a perfect match for a large orange butterfly, bold, vivid, and full of life, symbolizing passion and vitality. The fourth boy was different. He was colorblind, yet he never gave up on art and continued working through ink painting. His determination fascinated Kai, who compared him to a cabbage butterfly, an unusual species capable of sensing ultraviolet light beyond human perception. The fifth student was an illustrator whose work often appeared in small sections of newspapers. Despite limited exposure, his style was unique and had gained both fans and criticism. Only Yumi had appreciated him without judgment. Kai associated him with a white paper butterfly, a creature whose wings resembled drifting newspaper fragments, both admired and controversial at the same time. Kai carefully explained the inspiration behind these artworks, but when it came to the sixth subject, his own son, he avoided the topic entirely and moved on to describing the killings. He confessed that he first sedated the boys using sleeping pills hidden in their drinks, then used poison to end their lives. After that, he began transforming their bodies into his vision of art. Each victim was treated differently. One was modified using metallic elements to recreate the shimmering blue tones of morpho butterfly wings, with fine powders added to mimic their glowing texture. Another was constructed into a cement display, with severed hands positioned as if the subject was breaking free from a cocoon, symbolizing transformation and emergence. A third body had its neck rotated unnaturally, with painted red markings added to resemble wings unfolding. The pose was designed to imitate the striking appearance of an orange butterfly. In the fourth and fifth works, the bodies were carefully positioned with arms extended and expressions softened, creating an unnatural sense of peace and elegance. While Kai described his process in detail, the officer suddenly interrupted him. According to the investigation, all 6 victims had not died at the same time. Autopsy results revealed that Kai's son had died about a week later than the others. This raised suspicion that something else had happened during the timeline of events. When questioned, Kai fell silent before finally explaining his reason for killing his son. He referred to it as the ultimate masterpiece. He said his inspiration came from 2 species of butterflies, one poisonous and one that mimics the poisonous one. He believed his son embodied both traits, a perfect combination of truth and imitation. Years earlier, Kai had taken his son to Taiwan to collect butterflies. He remembered his son's innocent excitement during that trip, a moment that briefly softened his heart. But later, when he brought him to the art camp and saw the other gifted boys, something inside him broke. His suppressed desires resurfaced, and he carried out his vision on the 5 students. After completing his works, Kai felt an overwhelming sense of achievement, as though he had reached the highest point of artistic truth. But that feeling quickly faded, replaced by emptiness. He realized that there were over 20,000 butterfly species in the world, meaning he would need thousands of human subjects to fully recreate them. The thought drove him into despair, as it was impossible. When he returned home, he became convinced he saw butterfly wings appearing on his son, as if the boy himself was transforming. To him, it felt like a sign. A week later, Kai made a final decision. During a meal, he calmly asked his son what kind of butterfly he would want to become. Instead of answering directly, the boy shifted the conversation, reminiscing about their trip to Taiwan and mentioning simple memories like drinking pineapple juice on his birthday. They continued talking about their past, sharing quiet and ordinary moments. For a brief time, it seemed like a peaceful father-son connection still existed beneath everything. According to Kai's confession, the police believed they now understood the full motive and method behind the case. The court prepared to issue a final sentence. But then Kai made an unexpected demand. He asked to be sentenced to death immediately. The request shocked everyone in the room. However, the situation took a sudden turn. Kai was not actually the true killer. Everything he had confessed was an attempt to take responsibility and cover the real truth. The actual mastermind behind everything was his son, Shinji. Shinji had long been influenced by disturbing ideas linked to his grandfather's past. He once witnessed his grandfather publicly express radical artistic beliefs, which were heavily criticized. While others saw madness, Shinji saw inspiration. He secretly admired his grandfather and wanted to fulfill what he believed was his legacy. When he learned about the art camp organized by Yumi, he saw it as an opportunity. At first, he only wanted to observe and learn, but after seeing the other talented boys, his ambition grew. He realized he could not compete with them through normal means. Everything changed when he visited his grandfather's old studio. There, he saw portraits and memories tied to the family's artistic past. He began believing he had a special inner vision that others could not understand. From that point on, Shinji convinced himself that he needed to create his own form of perfect art, a human specimen. When he learned that Yumi planned to use glass cages in a forest exhibition, he saw it as the perfect stage for his idea. His perception of reality began to distort, and he started hallucinating butterflies around the boys, no longer seeing them as humans. He secretly drugged their drinks to knock them unconscious, planning everything in advance. But Kai eventually discovered his son's hidden plans after finding detailed files and disturbing materials on his computer. At first, he thought it was just imagination or a creative project. But what he found in the dark room and the photographs changed everything. Kai's hope collapsed when he rushed into the forest and discovered 5 lifeless bodies. Shocked beyond belief, he struggled to hold back his nausea. In that moment, he realized his son had completely lost himself to a twisted vision of art. When he returned home, Kai carefully examined the notes left behind by his son, Ren. What he found revealed that Ren had deeply studied each of the victims before acting. The first boy appeared kind and harmless on the surface, but in reality he had extreme tendencies. He once went as far as harming a homeless person's shelter simply because the shade of blue disrupted his idea of visual perfection. The second boy was a skilled graffiti artist, but he secretly lived a life of addiction. His creative work was often influenced by hallucinations. The third was a dancer who had once gained fame, though his past was hidden behind makeup and disguises. Despite his struggles, he still stood out as exceptionally talented. The fourth boy was colorblind. Even with his condition and personal trauma, including witnessing his mother's death, he never abandoned art. His resilience fascinated Ren deeply. The fifth was a journalist who expressed himself through controversial storytelling, using public attention and scandal as part of his creative identity. Ren had carefully selected each of them based on their traits, turning their personalities into symbolic inspiration for his artworks. After the incident, he stored the bodies in a hidden refrigerator, treating them as materials rather than victims. In his final diary entry, he wrote an apology addressed to his father. That same evening, Ren prepared a lavish meal for Kai. During their conversation, they spoke again about butterflies. At one point, Ren asked a strange, meaningful question, one Kai immediately understood but chose not to answer directly. The next morning, Ren left for school as if nothing had happened. Kai was left emotionally shattered, realizing his son was still acting normally despite everything. Overwhelmed, Kai decided to take responsibility for everything his son had done. But when Kai later entered Ren's studio, he discovered something even more disturbing. A detailed plan to turn Yumi's daughter, Hannah, into the next specimen. Sedatives had already been prepared. Realizing his son would not stop, Kai made a painful decision. He chose to eliminate Ren himself to prevent further tragedy, then took full blame for all the crimes. 3 years later, while imprisoned after confessing, Kai received a letter from Hannah. She also visited him in prison, bringing with her one of Ren's paintings. She informed Kai that Yumi had passed away from her illness, and all of her possessions had been left to Hannah. This news made Kai deeply reflect, and he began questioning everything he believed. For years, Kai had tried to understand why his son changed so drastically. The explanations written in Ren's diary never fully made sense. They felt inconsistent, almost staged. But after seeing the painting Hannah brought, Kai began to realize something important. He asked her about 2 butterfly species depicted in the artwork. Hannah answered correctly. At that moment, Kai reached a conclusion. He believed Ren was not the poisonous, blue-striped swallowtail butterfly he had imagined. Instead, he was more like a Taiwanese swallowtail, imitating a dangerous species only for survival. Hearing this, Hannah's expression changed immediately. Kai realized he had struck the truth. Before his execution, Kai said he only wanted to understand why his son had chosen to imitate such darkness instead of truly becoming it. After a long silence, Hannah finally confessed. She revealed that everything had actually started with her. Hannah explained that while her mother Yumi possessed extraordinary artistic perception, she did not inherit that talent. Her mother's disappointment always lingered in her mind, silently hurting her over time. The breaking point came when Yumi announced she would choose an outsider as her artistic successor. Hannah felt completely replaced and rejected as her own daughter. That emotional wound slowly turned into resentment and hatred toward everyone her mother praised. Driven by jealousy and anger, Hannah created a plan. She decided that if those selected artists disappeared, there would be no competition left for her mother's legacy. While Yumi was away for medical treatment, Hannah stayed behind at the estate, pretending to manage the household. In reality, she was preparing her plan. She mixed drinks laced with sedatives and waited until the boys collapsed one by one. Then she poisoned them, leaving only Rin alive. Afterward, she dragged the unconscious bodies into the basement, which she had prepared as a dissection space. She intended to continue her act of art. But before she could proceed, Rin unexpectedly woke up and discovered everything. At first, Hannah tried to justify her actions, claiming it was all for art. But she knew even herself that the explanation no longer held meaning. Conflicted and unstable, she considered killing Ren as well. However, something unexpected happened. Ren did not resist. Instead, he chose to assist her. He claimed that the bodies already possessed artistic value and that it would be a waste to destroy them carelessly. From that moment, he became involved. Together, Ran and Hannah arranged the bodies, mixing cement and carefully designing each pose, as if constructing an artwork guided by shared imagination. When they finished, they placed the bodies in the forest as planned. But Hannah suddenly broke down emotionally. She realized she had crossed a line she could no longer return from. In contrast, Ren showed no hesitation. He calmly took photographs of the results, already thinking about future creations. Kai listened to Hannah's story, still uncertain. Something about it felt incomplete. He questioned why Ren would so easily cooperate in such a horrifying act. That was not the personality he knew. He asked whether there had been any emotional connection between them. Hannah denied it, saying she only convinced Ren by promising to support his vision. But Kai remained unconvinced. He realized something even deeper was missing. Hannah knew nothing about butterflies or their symbolism. Yet the entire plan had been built around butterfly patterns and meaning. That level of understanding seemed impossible for her to develop so quickly, unless someone else had guided her. Kai began to suspect that Hannah might also be imitating someone else's intentions, just like a butterfly copying a poisonous species for survival. And when he eliminated every other possibility, only one name remained at the center of everything: Yumi. Hearing this, Hannah froze, her reaction confirming Kai's suspicion. It became clear that everything had been part of Yumi's design from the very beginning. The selected boys, the art camp, the entire situation, it had all been carefully planned. Even when illness struck and prevented her from completing the final stage herself, she had passed the responsibility to Hannah. Yumi had not seen it as murder, but as artistic purification, convincing Hannah that those chosen individuals were meant to be transformed or removed for a higher purpose. In the end, Hannah admitted the truth, but hinted that even this was not the full story. And that is where our story takes its most dangerous turn. I'm already working on the finale, so smash that like button and comment part 2 to see it first. Subscribe now to join the crew. You won't want to be late for the ending of this one.